Money and a lot of employment to come out of these pipelines, and it's just not true. Final figures haven't come out yet, but from what I've seen, what we're looking at in the Burrard Inlet is about $8.9 million in revenues to the BC government. So you're talking about 4 10,000ths of the budget, $20 billion budget of the BC government. It's not a lot of money. And the number of jobs that are going to be created by this, direct jobs at least, by this expansion are 35 jobs. It is not a large revenue source for the government, and 35 jobs is not a lot of jobs. You can make 35 jobs by starting a construction company to build houses. So we don't think that, and again, the whole plan is comprehensive. Site C to produce power, to frack. Fracking to get natural gas to send to the tar sands to extract the bitumen to send back to us. You can't be like the NDP, or we're going to have a government review about this and then we're going to have the fracking. It's a comprehensive plan. Either we're going to look for a change in ideas or we're going to keep on with the same thing. And if we keep on with the same thing, we all know where we're heading. And it's sad to me to see us talking about this. So everyone now, climate change is a problem. Climate change is a problem, but we're not changing our direction. And so a little tax here or there, it's a revenue source. It's gonna, like carbon taxing, will affect people's change. But what we really need is a government that's gonna start producing our power differently and move away from the pipelines. Alternative energy provides a lot of jobs. You're talking 4 to 8 or more times as many jobs per dollar of investment than in oil and gas. There's a clear choice what's right, and it's to produce clean energy.
Well, I'm going to use part of this 2 minutes just to read something out, because my assertion that BC's per capita fossil fuel consumption was down was ridiculed by a couple of candidates, and I just wanted to say where I've got this. It was actually CBC reality check. This is something that CBC does I think every morning. And in a report by an economist who studied BC's carbon tax for the Ottawa-based research group Sustainable Prosperity, he, in his report published last year, found that per capita fossil fuel consumption was down in BC by 15.1%. That's between 2008 and 2011. And that the preliminary numbers from Stats Canada show that a 17% reduction in per capita fossil fuel consumption is in BC since the tax was introduced. So when Craig tries to portray the carbon tax as not being an environmental issue, I think he's wrong. With respect to pipelines, I think that we have set out 5 conditions before any pipeline project will be considered, and I think you've probably heard those conditions before. But the first one, it has to go through a joint environmental review through the province and the feds. We've got to have the world leading class standards for oil spill response on the land and on the water. We need to consult with First Nations, and there should be some benefit to British Columbia for allowing the pipeline to come through. But what we won't do is we will not stand by and have our environment threatened for the sake of a pipeline going through. And I won't stand by for that. Neither will Jane, and neither will the Premier. What we have to do is take a balanced approach to our natural resource development and extraction in British Columbia, because we need revenue to pay for these things that we are being told are so important, and I believe in protecting. That's healthcare, that's the social services, and that's education. Thank you.
Well, just on the pipeline question, just to begin with, and I think the NDP's been very clear on what our position is. And we've, for about a year now, been opposed by 100% to the Enbridge pipeline through northern BC. And the fundamental reason is, with that pipeline, what you get is all the risk for British Columbia and almost none of the benefits. And there's no doubt that economic growth is one of those things that we need to encourage to make sure that we can have the things that we want in this province, no doubt about it. But the fact of the matter is that the Enbridge proposal suggests that BC over 30 years of that pipeline will generate $30 million in tax revenues. That is chump change. It's scarcely the coffee and donut budget in Victoria for a year. What we need is a substantial kind of money in this province, and we need a way to do it without that kind of risk that the Enbridge pipeline brings and that the Kinder Morgan pipeline brings here in the Burrard Inlet. So those are things that we cannot have in this province. And I think the bigger question is what exactly the BC Liberal position is. They've said they've got 5 conditions to let the Enbridge pipeline go through, which is to say they're not opposed to the Enbridge pipeline. They've got 5 conditions, 4 of which are environmental safety conditions or discussions with First Nations people, entirely appropriate, already there in legislation. The final condition is a number. Show us a certain amount of money and we might do it. Here's a question that you should ask today. What is the number that Premier Christy Clark has in mind? What's the number that they will say yes to Enbridge, yes to Kinder Morgan? Show us the number. We need to know what that number is, because on our side, we're opposed to it because we think some things are too important to protect and no amount of money is going to convince us that that's a good thing for British Columbia, because we know it's not. Thank you.
Regarding expansion of pipelines and expansion of the exports of raw materials such as fossil fuels, I think that the most important question when you're looking at the benefits and costs is what is it costing the people living in the area where that energy is coming from? And I'm talking about the Aboriginal peoples of northern Alberta in the first place. What is it costing them in terms of cancers, early deaths of other types? What is it costing the people of Alberta? I have lots of relatives in Alberta. I have lots of horror stories about the impact of this industry upon their lives. This is killing people. And it's an industry that they propose to expand by driving it through the unceded traditional territories of the Aboriginal peoples of this province, who have said repeatedly over and over again, ain't gonna happen. You're not gonna kill the Aboriginal peoples and the rest of the province, people of this province, by driving through these pipelines, and they're going to make sure it's stopped. And they have lots of allies in the rest of the population to make sure that this is not going to happen. We need to have a fundamental look at what energy resources are used for in this country, who owns them, is it possible to use them in a way that really builds the economy rather than simply exports them across the ocean or south of the border to the world's biggest military machine? Is it possible to use these raw materials in a way that does create jobs in renewable energy and other sectors of the economy which are useful for people, not for killing people? On the, finally, the question of per capita greenhouse gas emissions, that is a different question than the amount of gas that each individual buys. The amount of greenhouse gas emissions per capita in this province continues to grow, despite a temporary dip in personal gasoline consumption as a result of the economic crisis and the carbon tax.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is a very good question, and it's a big dichotomy. People are saying we're a Canadian port. We're not just a BC port, we're a Canadian port. And as a Canadian port, we can't say no to Canadian exports. And to some extent, I agree, we shouldn't say no, but we're also responsible to British Columbians, to our children, to actually look at how we're going to maximize benefits and minimize risks. And that is never going to happen as long as we're sitting around waiting for industry to say, this is our proposal for what should happen. I think that the BC government needs to take a much more proactive approach in working with industry and saying, this is what we want to see for the future of the port. This is what we want to see for the future of BC exports. We want to maximize the extent to which our port is supporting BC products moving out of the country, not just Alberta tar sand. But we haven't done that yet. Neither the government nor the official opposition has sat down and said to these pipeline companies, this is our vision for BC as an export province. This is our vision for Vancouver as one of Canada's ports. This is our vision for how we want to grow our economy and protect our environment. And we need to have that conversation now, because we should have had it 20, 30, 40 years ago. We're far, far, far behind schedule on this. I have opposed the Kinder Morgan expansion since the very beginning. I have, with regards to Enbridge, if we ever reach a point where we have super tankers coming through the Great Barrier Rainforest, I will be out there in my kayak blockading it with everyone else. I think we need to build BC's economy through proactive discussions with the extractive industries, recognizing that they've had a role in building BC and should have a role in the future of BC, but a future based on our terms, not on theirs. Thank you.
So for the second half, if you can come forward, and there's a mic here. If you'd like to ask your question in person, you're most welcome. You can come and stand here and ask your question. If it is to a specific party or a specific candidate, please mention that. Otherwise, all the candidates will answer the questions. Again, one of the candidates from each party will take the answers. And for this part, please limit the answers to 1 minute each, so we get to hear more from more of the candidates. And the questions, please keep the questions to actual questions, not statements. And again, keep them to 30 seconds. And we hope that the questions remain respectful, because we hope to keep the whole event respectful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really only had one question for a candidate that's not here, and that is Alan Molyneux, running for the Conservatives. I would have asked Alan Molyneux to, if he hasn't already done so, is to resign as the president of the North Van Lonsdale Conservative Association, Constituency Association. Apart from that, to withdraw his candidacy from the Lonsdale candidate selection, withdraw it completely. You won't know all the details from here now, but it may surface later. The only other comments is that I'm sorry, and it's not really a question, it's my own personal opinion, is that when I go to an MLA, I expect some support and real interest, and I'm sorry, Naomi, with all your things up here, no way.
Thank you. If you can.
Yeah, and same with Jane, I went there, no way. I'd like to say thank you to this lady, Jamie Webb, and if I was in the Seymour, I'd vote for the Independent.
Hi. Well, this question is for all candidates, but Liberals, I'm giving you a break, in fact. I've heard several times from Iranians of different cities that has been lack of communication within their candidates. After 4 years ago, they had this journey of being an MLA, and I'm, as one of them, experienced in that I had difficulty to communicate with the person that I voted, for example. Tried to visit the office, was not possible for me. So the question is, especially numbers of the decisions made behind the doors and data that are not correct. What are the candidates' strategy to make this communication more effective if we vote for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've had some of the same experiences. The first thing I think we need to do is I think we need to have live information feeds. I want to know what's going on in discussions in Victoria while they're happening, not after the decision has been made. I expect my MLA to tell me at the end of the day what has been discussed, what it means for my riding, so that I can get involved at a time when I can actually have an impact, not after the fact when it's too late. I think that it's very, very important to make use of information technology so we can bring much more of these discussions online so that we don't have to be in the riding to talk to constituents. The decisions are made in Victoria. The communication should happen when the MLA is in Victoria, and then when they're preparing for it, and then finally, when they come back. So that would certainly be my top priority. I also believe that MLA should have live reporting on their expenditures. I think that's only fair for constituents. Thank you.
As you probably know, Elizabeth May was the first Green elected in Canada recently, and she's really been an inspiration for me just because I've had to contact an MP, and when I contacted her, I couldn't believe the level of responsiveness. And beyond that, she takes a lot of time in her own riding, not just to deal with people when they have concerns, but to actually educate them on what's going on in the Canadian Parliament. So I'd like to follow a lot in her footsteps, and that's just making my office a place where anybody's welcome to come to bring their concerns. I'm free as a Green Party MLA candidate to support the concerns of yourself rather than just my leader. If I don't agree with the party or I don't agree with my leader, I'm free to deal with you directly. That way I'm more accountable to you. I can't just say, oh, it's my party's leader's fault, they don't believe in this, or you don't get any contact. But again, the thing I really like is that she educates her constituents what's happening in Parliament.
Yeah, I'd like to address your comment. One of the things that I do in my office is if people write me on any topic, then I record that, the person and the topic, and that if something comes up in the legislature that pertains to that topic, I let you know about it. So, and you can watch it actually live. You can watch the debates live on the parliamentary channel. And it's available all the time. You can even watch it not live, like after the day, and get all the answers that you need to know as to what the bill was about, the debate was about, who debated it. And if people come to me and say that they feel strongly about a particular issue, then I stand up in the House and speak on that particular issue. And what I also do is I send a monthly report every month as to what I spoke out on in the legislature. So I'm extremely accountable and extremely transparent. And I welcome anybody to sign up for my MLA reports anytime.
Thank you, and that is obviously a good question. It goes to the core of the role of an elected official in a free and democratic society. Over the last number of months, I've been talking to a great many North Vancouverites in public places, on their doorsteps, on the telephone, by email communication and otherwise. And of course, the duty that rests upon me, and it is a duty of honor, is to ensure that I continue to do so after I'm elected, that I not place myself in some type of elevated position. And I know I hold up as an example Craig Keating, City Councillor in the City of North Vancouver, and somebody who I've always heard is so accessible and available. I'm a lawyer. Certainly as a lawyer, we deal with communication issues, and I hope that my pledge to you as constituents, if any of you are in Seymour, is that I would carry on and ensure that I integrate myself fully into the community. But thank you for the question.
Well, I have great respect for the work that individual elected officials do. It's extremely difficult work, and they can't always satisfy everybody that comes to speak to them. I know that not because I've been elected, but I have a partner who's served in local government a couple of terms, and I know firsthand, you know, the effect that has on people's families, the incredible workload that comes with that. But it does come with the burden of elected office. You have to be available to your constituents. You have to meet with them, hear them, reflect their concerns in some way to whatever body of government you're in. My bigger concern, though, is that quite often political leaders who are elected, they will listen to their constituents, but the ones they will act upon are the big corporations. So it's very fine and well to say, you know, I'll meet with you, I'll talk to you about your problems, but if you're only carrying out the policies dictated by the rich and powerful in our society, then it doesn't really matter too much.
Thank you. So if anybody would like to ask questions, please come on up.
Second.
Hi, my question is for the Liberal candidates. I am over and over again disgusted by the fact that BC has the highest rate of child poverty in Canada. I'm just wondering how you can justify continuing this highest rate of poverty in Canada. Thank you.
Actually, I'm glad that you brought that up, because Craig brought that up in his opening remarks, and I wanted to challenge Craig in something you said, and I've written it down, but I can't. Let me go back. Craig, you actually, I won't repeat what you said, but I want to tell you what the NDP record is, and in child poverty. Under the NDP in the 1990s, child poverty was at a higher level than any time under the BC Liberals. The child poverty rate for the last 20 years has been actually lower than under the NDP, or the child poverty rate in BC in the last decade has been lowered only once, and that was in 2008, in the last 20 years. And I can tell you that any child that's in poverty is one child too many. But the best way to get a child, I think, out of poverty is for the parents to have a job, and that's what we're about.
There's no doubt the fact that Canada as a country had a horrible record of child poverty in the 1990s. In 1989, the Parliament of Canada, after a motion by Ed Broadbent, determined that we were going to eliminate child poverty in this country by 2015. I don't think we're quite there yet. And every province from the 1990s forward continued to make progress on that file. The problem in the 1990s is that the money that has been specifically transferred from Ottawa to deal with the issue of child poverty has had the least possible effect here in British Columbia. As other provinces have moved forward, British Columbia has fallen behind. That's the problem with the Liberal record. The other problem with the Liberal record, and it's great to say that the problem of poor children is poor parents, the question becomes why there's so stinking many poor parents in this province. And the fact of the matter is that when Adrian Dix first came into the legislature in 2011, he introduced a Poverty Reduction Act, something that 7 other provinces in Canada have, and it was voted down by this government. They need to explain why they do not, in fact, take poverty seriously, both adult poverty and child poverty, and we have a plan to deal with that. Thank you.
Next question.
As you know, the Persian community is an important community in BC and North Shore especially. What's your plan in our community, such as, for example, Persian Community Center or etc.?
This time we're going to start with the NDP party. So the question is around the Persian community here on the North Shore, and in particular, what can the party do to help establish a Persian Community Center or help facilitate the integration of the immigrants?
Well, thank you very much, and obviously I very much value, as a human being, the Persian community. As a lawyer, I have had close relations with quite a number of Persians, and it's been meaningful to me. I've found these relationships very rewarding. I can't stand before you and say that the BC NDP has any specific plans with respect to the development of Persian community centres, but what I can say is that if government has good priorities, and if government is careful with its money, it can leverage itself to a greater degree towards public good generally. And if we're not spending money on ad campaigns to convince us that the jobs program is working when there's 34,000 jobs being lost and yet we're being brainwashed that it's working, and if we're not hosting Times of India award shows, then we do have more money to focus on the public good. And that's what a BC NDP government will do.
Thank you. I have heard the request for government at all levels, federal, provincial, and local, to build an Iranian cultural center or society. Right now, I can tell you that we don't have a plan for that either. But what I do here is that the people who have come from Iran are not being used to their potential. So we have people who are engineers and others who have come to Canada, and they want their professional credentials recognized. And what we need to do in BC, and we've started doing that, we've just invested $5 million into a program to better assess, so make it easier, faster, and fairer for people from all different countries who are immigrating to Canada to ensure that they're used to their best potential.
So I've lived all over Canada. I've come into contact with all the kinds of cultures growing up and getting educated, things like this. And something I've always considered is, what is Canadian culture? It's a common thing, and to many of us it's multiculturalism. Some would dispute that, but to me it's the multitude of cultures that's the really important thing. As far as building specific facilities like a Persian community center, we actually have a completely different vision. We favor a more integrated community centers. We would call them community schools, where the resources are more combined, and groups such as Persians would have the ability to meet within the facility. As far as whether we would support funding-wise, a Persian community center, I think at this time we probably would. It would have to, it's not again, like the other parties, we don't have a policy on this, but the vibrancy of all cultures here is important to us.
I agree with the Liberals' recognition of the need to acknowledge professional credentials from other countries. I think that should become a top priority. But I would reverse the Liberal cuts to arts and culture. I think we need to continue to invest in arts and culture across BC. I would also want to strengthen education for all children so that schools can focus on the special needs of each child when they're entering the education system, rather than on finding enough money to fix a leak in a roof. So those are the three issues that I would look at.
The next question was sent by a gentleman, and it was written in Farsi, so I'm going to translate it to English. And جواب سوال فارسی رو بعد از برنامه، یعنی حدوداً 10 دقیقه دیگه یکی از ما براتون ترجمه می‌کنیم. So the question is twofold, and it's asking what the party, individual party or candidates' plans are for senior care. And the second part of the question is, once people graduate from post-secondary education, what plans are there to help them get employment?
My turn to start off. Senior care. Generally speaking, our party supports spending a lot more to help seniors stay at home, providing the types of support that are needed so they can continue to live in their own communities and in their own homes. Over the long term, we think that's a lot more financially feasible than hospitalizing seniors or moving them into the senior centers before they're ready to do that. And this is one of the things that's quite common in our society. Governments make short-term fiscal decisions which have negative long-term implications both for the finances of the province and for the individuals involved. So we think it needs to be done much more carefully. The question of unemployment of people graduating from post-secondary institutions, this is a big problem across the entire capitalist world, where we're hitting record unemployment levels in many countries, and Canada is well on the way to achieving that dubious record at some point in the near future, as long as the capitalist economic crisis continues. And I'm not sure there's much the BC government can do about that.
Okay, thank you. First of all, on senior care, I agree that it's very important to support seniors in staying in their home. I've looked at the Liberals' Better at Home program, which is a good program, except that it amounts to about $24 per senior per year to stay in their homes, which really isn't going to do a lot or get very far. I think we need to increase funding for programs like that. With regards to jobs following post-secondary education, this actually ties into the way I think government approaches addressing a problem when they arise rather than planning for it, both for senior cares and for post-secondary education. I think engaging families, engaging students, engaging seniors before they face these issues in order to help them to build their capacity to enter the workforce by understanding exactly where the need is, where the demand is, when they're in high school, matching skills. When I went to university, I had no idea what skills I needed to actually function in the workplace. I discussed this. Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Jamie, you're so well behaved. Right when the bell rings, stop. So as far as the seniors, I believe that the best place for the senior is in the community. I think, kind of relating to the last question, there's many cultures we have here where we can see, say, East Indian people, they tend to live in larger family units as a complaint of people in Surrey, but I think if you were living in that family unit, you would be, we live in a society where people are very much individuals and they're almost cut off from everybody else, and I think this becomes an increasing problem as you become older. You start to lose your friends, your family, become isolated, and to me this is the biggest problem that seniors face. I think certain types of activities like, say, dancing could be the most positive thing that a senior could have for their health. And to most people, they wouldn't even think about that. They just think, how much money can we throw into the healthcare system? I think we need, again, make sure people can stay in their homes. The home care is a good thing. Move on quickly to the students. I think we should integrate schooling more with the workplace from an earlier age, get people interested in fields and specific ideas, and then give them the training.
I think there's a couple of issues to deal with here in a minute. So I think the first important thing to do, and it's there in the NDP platform, is reinvestment in home care and community care for seniors. That's been a big thing that has been cut under the Liberal government, is they cut home care. Seniors do better at home. We also need to have a better emphasis on pharmacare. In BC, seniors pay 25% more per person on average per person for pharmaceuticals than in any other province. We need to reverse that by establishing a new therapeutics initiative. We also need to ensure that seniors have an independent advocate so when they need assisted living or care, that they have somebody who's independent from the minister who's able to guide them through that process. In terms of how we deal with linking up skilled workers and people with advanced education to jobs, it's a different kind of economic plan. In this province, we are now shipping out more raw logs than we've ever shipped out in the history of British Columbia. We need to process those things here at home. And similarly with the positions on pipeline, the positions on natural gas, we need to do these sorts of things here. We need to have a value-added economy, and we can certainly no longer let good, skilled jobs like film jobs leave this province and leave this riding because the government says that that industry is effectively a sunset industry. Does anybody else here ring it?
Maybe Jane or Naomi?
With regards to seniors, my colleague in West Vancouver, Capilano, who's the Minister of State for Seniors, so eloquently says that the BC Liberal government has maintained the spending for seniors care. Did you know that almost 50% of the provincial budget is provided for health, and 50% of the health budget is for seniors? And we've maintained that funding, and the best program is the Better at Home program. And we recognize that seniors enjoy being at home as long as they can, as possible as they can, and they might just need a little bit of help in cutting the lawn or going shopping or even a friendly visit. This program was a $20 million investment and a partnership between the United Way and the North Shore Community Resource Society was the one that got the contract on the North Shore, and we're very excited and proud to yes, hear that. We're very proud to be able to announce that.
Did you want to answer the question as well?
Did, yeah.
Oh, sorry. So we're going to take one last question, and I think Mr. Bushman, you had your hand up, and then we're going to move on to, unless the candidates can stay longer, but yeah. So then we're going to move on to the conclusion of the program, which is a brief statement by each of the candidates.
Actually, I have two questions. One of them is, after Expo, this city and this province start to improve and absorb lots of money from all of the immigrants, and it seems that this money that absorbed by this specifically province is not very active investment. It's just absorbed by non-active investment part of economy, and it doesn't have much impact on you know, creating jobs and those stuff. And neither you know, NDP government on 90s nor BC Liberals on 20s, they can't, you know, convert this type of huge investment that came to this province specifically to a very active one. It's a good place to just park investment from a rich part of all around the world, but it doesn't have any impact on job creation. That's why we have lots of problems here. Is there any plans? I'm so sorry. Is there any plan for that one? And then the second question: how we can convert the election process more democratic? What do you think about it?
Thank you. We're going to start with the BC NDP.
We're getting table service now. I think the question is an excellent one, because we now have a perverse situation in Canada where the Canadian government says we want entrepreneurial immigrants and immigrants with high skills, and they ask people to come with money and skills. And the first thing that happens is people with money have no training and familiarity with the Canadian economic system. They lose money because they make bad business deals because they don't understand that system. Some basic training in that would very much help. I know that North Shore Multicultural Service tries its best to do that, but it's been continually underfunded on that. And on the question of recognizing foreign credentials, we're the ones in our platform that we are promising to work with associations to make sure that trained immigrants who come here can practice more easily in their professions. I think we need to mobilize capital in that sense by making people feel part of this community, and I think that's the way you do it. And I think society at large has to move forward on that. On the questions of making elections more democratic, I think the chief democratic challenge is the fact that politics doesn't really affect people very much anymore. We need a better politics. A politics is not about negative ads, but a politics is about priorities and contrasting visions for our province, and that's why in this election we have tried in our party to avoid any negative attack ads against the Premier or any other candidates, but to talk about the issues that are relevant in this election, and that's better politics.
Stay here. One of the things that I believe in is if we want to attract investment to British Columbia, we have to have a welcoming environment for investors. And one of the key reasons people come to BC is they consider this a safe, secure place to not just park their money for investment, but also to bring their families to live. So it's a combination of ensuring that we have a safe, welcoming society, and then having obviously a financial system that's got a strong foundation. So having low taxes, having a predictable government that invites business over is very, very important. And I think we've done that. And you can see that with our increased trade to Asia. I tell you, we would have been sunk if we hadn't broadened and deepened our relationship with Asia after 2009. With respect to the democratic process and improving it, we actually need more people to come out to vote. And I think it starts with us having these conversations at the dinner table with our family and make politics relevant.
So as far as foreign investment in BC, what I see as the biggest problem is so much of it is in real estate. And what this does to us is it drives our housing prices so far beyond our income that a lot of us, especially younger people who didn't buy in before this happened, can't afford to buy a place, or the places that they can buy are it's just such a low end of the market, but yet they have to take out a long-term investment in something that it really isn't going to be suitable for them for any length of time. So to me, I see it, this is just, real estate speculation is not helping us. It's somebody gambling on our property from elsewhere. As far as, sorry, I'm forgetting. Okay, we need to reform our democratic systems. I mean, that's the bottom line. Our system now drives the oppositional politics that we see in BC, the party system, the system that we use to elect, the first past the post system, is highly problematic. It's not representative overall. It might work in one riding, but if you look across BC, it's terrible.
On the question of active investments versus passive investments, it's a very important question. When I worked for the World Bank, the first thing we did when we had money to invest in a country was look at the ability of that country to actually absorb the investment and make good use of it. I don't think BC yet has a long-term vision for the future of the province, and as a result of that, it doesn't have the capacity it requires to absorb the investment that's coming from immigrants. And that needs to be reformed quickly before we continue to throw good money after bad. With regards to the democratic process, I believe in representative votes. I like the system that has been shown to be more democratic, of actually choosing first, second, third, fourth choice. That does end up with each each voter actually having their views and their voices heard in a much better system. So I would fully support electoral reform in that regard.
On the question of investments, it's an interesting question. I'm not really so sure you can have different rules for how people from different countries invest in Canada. But that's a question for legislatures to decide, I suppose. I'm more interested in general sort of immigration questions. We have a society in which more and more we're trying to create a couple of categories of people who come and live and work in this country, and less of those people are refugees or people who really need to come to Canada. Instead, we're building a cheap labor force, temporary foreign workers, deeply exploited, without many rights, and some private investors. So it's an immigration pattern that has to be changed in a much more democratic way. On the question of electoral democracy, our party is in favor of a proportional representation system, which would allow a much wider range of parties to be elected.
We would like to have hear from the candidates their conclusion, their concluding statements, and we're going to start with the BC NDP party and end with the BC Liberal Party. So we're going clockwise.
I'd like to thank the candidates for giving us their time, and if they're not able to stay, then we thank them for the time that they were able to give us.
So there's a motion from the floor, I believe, to extend this meeting another 15 minutes. If everybody agrees to that, we go for that.
But our candidates have other engagements and appointments they need to attend to, so you can stay and some of them will answer. Please.
I'll certainly be glad to stay to answer John's question, Sam's question. No problem. We'll be answering those questions. Well, at the moment it's over. You can talk to the organizers.
Sorry, this event is 4 to 6, so if you let's get to the closing statements and we'll see what we can do after.
There is a motion from the floor. If they extend the meeting for another 15 minutes, you can actually put that motion to vote if you like.
Yeah, sorry.
How often we get these meetings? This is just here, hey? Hear from the public. They're giving us all the time they're able to give us. We should say thank you and goodbye. Allow them to leave.
Enough already. I want to go home.
I'm going to wait until it settles down.
Well. Thank you.
I just want to reiterate a point I raised earlier in the day, which is that this could be one of the most important elections in British Columbia's history. I feel deep in my heart that we are at a real crossroads in this province. that we cannot continue to go down the fiscal path that we've been led for the last 10 years, such that by the end of 2015, debt in this province will have doubled since 2008 to $69 billion. We cannot continue to go down a path of manifest and increasing inequality in our society, and we cannot continue to go down a path where the economic and environmental future for the province of British Columbia is tied up with the export of dangerous raw resources. We need to have a new kind of British Columbia where we get back to fiscal sanity, where, as the current Minister of Finance said, those who can pay a little more in these tough times can and should pay a little more in these tough times. We need to have a targeted focus on how, through housing, through pharmacare reform, through seniors care, through a poverty reduction act, we make British Columbia a more equal province. And we certainly need to stand together as British Columbians and decide that our environment is important enough, that our pristine coastlines and our long-standing moratorium against tankers and on the coast will not stand up for the Enbridge pipeline or Kinder Morgan. I urge you to vote NDP on May 14th. Thank you very much.
I'm running to be MLA because I believe we can have a government with better priorities. Do we want $70 million in cuts to advanced education, whole programs closed at Capital IOU, or do we want investment in skills training so that British Columbians can get trained with the skills of tomorrow to work right here in this province? Do we want raw log exports? Doubled in the last 10 years, 30,000 jobs lost in the forestry sector. Or do we want manufacturing jobs right here at home and investments in our pine beetle deforested forests so that we have jobs into the future? Do we want 30% cuts to home care with our elderly not being able to stay in their own homes? Or do we want investments in home care so that our elderly stay at home and not in hospitals? Ladies and gentlemen, we can do better, and we have to choose. Do we choose more of the same, or do we choose a better government? On May the 14th, I ask you to vote. And on May the 14th, I ask you to vote for better government. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Sorry to the brother there who wants to extend the meeting. You know, it's always a difficult choice for people to make. In my case, I left my son's soccer tournament before his championship game to come here and speak to you, and I enjoyed very much doing it. That candidates do have lives and other commitments. I hope to go have supper with some of my campaign workers. On the question of just wrapping up here, we do have a chance to change things in this province on May the 14th. We do desperately need to change things, but we need to think about what kind of change. And I think it's time that we started talking about really radical, fundamental change in the way that our society is organized. And if you agree that capitalist private ownership is driving our planet over the cliff, to the brink of destruction, then you need to look at socialist alternatives, and that's why we're on the ballot. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
I'd like to thank the organizers and everybody who came. Just to wrap things up, I just wanted to outline for you the 5 things that would be my top priorities if I am elected. The first would be to keep increased tanker traffic out of Burrard Inlet. The second would be to support the NDP in pushing for the Advocate for Seniors to be an independent office. The third would be to support the Green Party in their proposal to install an independent advocate for disabled persons. The fourth would be to encourage government to sit down with industry to share with them British Columbians' vision for the future, so that they can be a part of it along with British Columbians instead of being leading it. And the fifth would be to stop the endless cycle of parent fundraisers in schools and actually fund our schools adequately over a long cycle of 5 to 10 years so that you know what funding is coming. I actually added one last question to this, which is I would the last thing I would do is review this $30 million coffee and donut budget that Craig was mentioning. That seems excessive to me. So on May 14th, if you're in the North Vancouver Seymour riding, I encourage you to go out and vote for something and consider an independent vote. First time in 12 years you've had that option. Thank you.
So the Liberals and the NDP are obviously the big fish, and they're going to tell you that you have two options, and that's to vote for either a more Liberal government or to go back to NDP government. And I'd like to suggest that it's not a new government that North Vancouver needs, but an MLA that is free to listen to their needs, their concerns, and not trying to ram a leader or a party's views down their throat. And this is, unfortunately, it doesn't really matter which way you vote in BC under the current system that we have, except for Green. The Greens do not have a whip. I do not have to answer. This is something that people don't even understand when I talk to them. I might tell them something and it differs from what Jane Stark, our leader, says. And then when they talk to Jane about it, they find out, well, she's not upset by the fact that I disagree with her. We have a clear direction that we push for in the Green Party, but we don't believe in the party telling people what to do. We believe that constituents need a representative who can represent their views and be free to do that. Thank you.
Ryan, we actually, at BC Liberal, do have open votes, not on the budget, but on other items, non-confidence items. So unlike the NDP, who I don't believe have open votes in the BC legislature, and we've actually had members of our caucus vote against some positions. So that does actually happen. I just want to tell you that I love living in North Vancouver. I think we are so fortunate to live in a province like BC, but in a jurisdiction like North Vancouver. I want to make sure we protect those investments that we've made. We've increased our spending in healthcare and in CLBC, in education. We have top-notch post-secondary education and investments in British Columbia. We care about our seniors and we care about the environment. But we need to take a balanced approach, and we've got to make sure the world knows that BC, which is a very small but open economy, is open for business. Thank you, and I hope I get your support.
Thank you very much for the organizers for organizing, and everybody that's still here. Thank you. Yes, I would like to resume being your MLA for North Vancouver Seymour, continue my personal attention to constituents' issues, continue my accessibility and transparency, and letting people know what we're doing both in my office in North Vancouver as well as in the legislature in Victoria. And I also believe that the BC Liberal government has done a good job overall of protecting our economy, and we do have a plan to continue to protect our economy, grow jobs, and make us the most successful province in in Canada, which I think we basically are at this point. So I'm very proud to live here and proud to support the people that live here, as well as ask for your vote to support me in the upcoming election. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Many thanks to all of the candidates for taking the time to be here with us this sunny afternoon, and to all of you for participating. CIVIC IC always encourages and welcomes the participation of everyone, the Iranian community and everyone else in the greater community. And we thank you for attending. If you have questions, some of the candidates are kind enough to be staying around for a bit longer, and you can ask them questions directly, or you can send us your questions and we will be happy to relay the questions to the candidates. Thank you very much, and you can sign up if you'd like to stay in touch with us. Thanks.
Okay, I'm not going to move on down here.
1, 2, 3.
Some more.
1, 2, 3.
Thank you very much.